The Peninsula Regional Coastal Storm Risk Management Feasibility Study is a joint study between the City of Hampton and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that began in July of 2024. Authorized under Public Law 84-71, dated June 15, 1955, this study is critical for addressing the growing threat of coastal storms in the Virginia Peninsula, which is particularly vulnerable to flooding from these coastal storms. As coastal storms become more frequent and intense and sea level continues to rise, this study will aim to find effective solutions to protect human life, health, and safety in the region. This study will evaluate ways to manage risk for the cities of Hampton, Newport News, Poquoson, and Williamsburg, and the counties of James City and York. The goal of the study is to plan for and mitigate future damages and enhance community resilience against severe coastal storms. The Corps has a multi-step civil works planning process with several phases ranging from study initiation to operations and maintenance. A key part of the civil works process is the feasibility study phase, which has important milestones occurring throughout the study. The feasibility phase begins with scoping and defining the planning strategy in early stages, followed by the development and subsequent evaluation of alternatives. After the alternatives are evaluated, the tentatively selected plan is identified, then optimized and refined. The result of this process is the recommended plan, which is presented at the agency decision milestone. The culmination of the feasibility phase is the approval of the recommended plan by the signing of a chief's report. Right now, we are in the scoping phase of the feasibility study. There will be additional opportunities in the future for the public to participate and comment. To put this into a broader perspective, if the feasibility study phase results in a plan for construction and is approved by the signing of a chief's report, the project must be authorized and funded by Congress and a project partnership agreement executed before the project enters the pre-construction engineering and design phase. As a part of the scoping phase of a feasibility study, the Corps, with the help of our non-federal sponsor, stakeholders, and the public, must define the problems, opportunities, objectives, and constraints of a study. These are the foundation of a study and define what the feasibility study is evaluating and explain why and how solutions are developed. Problems are existing undesirable conditions that may continue to negatively affect communities and resources. Opportunities are future desirable conditions that provide benefits to communities and resources. Defining the problems and opportunities helps us to understand existing issues and desired outcomes of the study, and also leads us towards developing the objectives and constraints of a study. Objectives and constraints focus the study and lay the groundwork for plan development and evaluation. Objectives define the purpose and outcome of the study, while constraints place boundaries on plan formulation and can include legal or policy limitations. Existing problems in the study area include risk to life, health, and safety. Coastal storms put people's lives at risk. Strong winds, high tides, and flooding can cause serious harm. Properties and infrastructure are at risk. Homes, buildings, and infrastructure like roads and bridges are in danger from coastal storms. Recurrent flooding is also a problem. With sea levels rising, there is more frequent flooding during high tides and king tides. This floods roads and properties, causing disruptions and damage. Critical infrastructure and assets are at risk from coastal storms. Important facilities like hospitals, schools, cultural sites, and military bases are at risk. These places are crucial for our daily lives and national security. Economic vitality is also at risk. Coastal storms can negatively impact the local economy. Businesses may suffer from damages, closures, and reduced tourism. Vulnerable populations and environmental justice communities are disproportionately impacted by coastal storms. This includes repetitive property damages, housing insecurity, and the inability to evacuate. Simply put, coastal storms and rising sea levels are a threat to communities, safety, and infrastructure. It's important that we understand these problems so we can develop a plan that protects the invaluable resources in the region. Opportunities for the feasibility study include to improve the resilience of communities, critical infrastructure, critical facilities, and transportation networks in the Virginia Peninsula to coastal storms and flooding, to enhance the resilience of cultural resources, national strategic assets, and military assets to mitigate the effects of coastal storms, to improve floodplain management and flood storage capacity, to utilize nature-based solutions, including the beneficial reuse of dredge material, to enhance the natural coastal system of defenses to manage coastal storm risk, to conserve and improve waterfront recreation opportunities and support connections to the water, and to engage the public through education and outreach on storm risks, resilience strategies, and hazard mitigation efforts, particularly for vulnerable populations and environmental justice communities. Objectives are statements that include a location, timing, and description of the results that a study aims to achieve. In the Virginia Peninsula, over the 50-year period of analysis, the feasibility study should strengthen economic resilience by mitigating coastal storm and flooding impacts on development, enhance resilience of critical infrastructure, and manage risk to human life, health, and safety from coastal storm impacts, improve community resilience and manage coastal storm risks for socially vulnerable populations and environmental justice communities, improve resilience by utilizing a framework of multiple lines of defense, and manage the risk to essential utilities from the effects of coastal storms. Constraints are factors that are unique to the study and may limit plan formulation. The feasibility study should avoid, minimize, and/or mitigate exacerbating coastal storm risks within and around the study area, exacerbating water quality or quantity impacts, creating or exacerbating risk to human life, health, and safety, impacts to military readiness, cultural resources, environmental resources, utilities, and the viewshed, disruption of economic drivers, and fragmentation of communities. As a part of the planning process, there are many different considerations that we must take into account during the study. Planning considerations include, but are not necessarily limited to, sea level change, navigation, existing and future projects, public and private shellfish grounds or leases, existing and future environmental conditions, flood pathways, future development, evacuation corridors, socially vulnerable communities, actions by other agencies or organizations, federal facilities and military operations, and protected resources. This study will evaluate different potential measures to manage coastal storm risk. We will look at structural measures, nature-based solutions, and non-structural measures. Structural measures are physical structures that are made to reduce damaging levels of coastal storm inundation. Levees, floodwalls, and storm surge barriers are examples of structural measures. Nature-based solutions are engineered features that mimic or work with existing natural features to provide flood risk management. Living shorelines, beach and dune enhancement, and hybrid oyster reefs are examples of nature-based solutions. Non-structural measures reduce flood damages without changing the frequency or extent of storm inundation. Structure elevation, flood proofing, relocation or acquisition, and advanced warning systems are examples of non-structural measures. To comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, we will prepare an integrated feasibility report and NEPA document. Standard NEPA documents include environmental assessments, or EAs, and environmental impact statements, or EISs. When impacts are not anticipated to be significant, an EA is prepared, and when impacts are expected to be significant, an EIS is prepared. At this time, we are looking for stakeholder and public input as a part of our NEPA process, but it is anticipated that an EIS is highly likely. With that said, our next steps would include the publication of a notice of intent in the Federal Register. As a part of our guidelines, we do not issue notice of intents until closer to our tentatively selected plan milestone. It is important to note that this study will follow core policies and guidelines for economic, cultural, social, and environmental impacts. The topics that may be evaluated as a part of this study are identified on this slide. We have initiated our scoping process and are looking for comments from the public, agencies, and other stakeholders. The comment period has been extended and will run through December 31st, 2024. Comments may be submitted in writing via mail or email.